your activities at the moment, as you say, not calling yourself a scientist, not wearing that hat, but more of a communicator and an educator around science. Would that be fair? You won the award, let me get this right, the New Zealand Prime Minister's Science Communication Prize. So about communicating science. I was thinking, in this current climate we live in, like I tell a story about I don't know which one of my kids it was, but she was probably 10 at the time, and saying, did you learn to juggle, because I'm a good juggler, did you learn to juggle on YouTube, Dad? Just not having that idea that when I was a teenager, YouTube didn't exist. Yeah. That there was other ways to do things. I can still remember in my house the Encyclopedia Britannica volume sitting in the family room, and no internet, no nothing. If we wanted to know stuff, to the library, or obviously the encyclopedias, which unfortunately within 12 months of printing are probably technically out of date. I wonder, from a communicative point of view, when it comes to science, things like YouTube, things like, these things which have got everything on them in a heartbeat, is that something that you are needing to come to grips with and are utilizing when you are communicating science in 2021 compared to 2001 or 1981?
I think they're powerful weapons powerful tools to communicate science, but they're also potentially huge problems with YouTube, because the notion of what is actually
Is that because of the misinformation?
Well, it's misinformation, and I think you've got to be able to filter the information that's correct and the information that's not right. And I think a massive challenge for our society is the spread of misinformation, and to wit the COVID issues that we've got at the moment. There's an enormous number of people who are spreading complete nonsense about COVID. And stepping back a little bit, if we look at the value of science communication, I think people like Susie Wiles and Michael Baker during the COVID crisis demonstrated the value of proper, good quality science communication, because I think a lot of the reason we got through the crisis was not only did the communicators do a good job of talking to the public, they did a really good job of advising, the scientists did a great job of advising the policymakers and the politicians. And New Zealand is in its privileged position at the moment simply because we listen to the scientists. And obviously, we're a small island at the edge of the world, and that makes things maybe slightly easier than for places like the UK. But still, we made sensible, dare I say it, knowledge-based decisions based on good science. And what are we now, 18 months? No, sorry, it's 18 months? No, it's 14 months after the start of the crisis. And we're lucky, touch wood, that we don't have this in the community. And I think more than anything, this has demonstrated the importance of science communication and having good scientists who can communicate. And that's why I do feel the work that we do at the museum, it's on a completely different scale to the amazing stuff that's done by Susie and Michael. It's really important that we have a team who can actually try and help communicate complicated issues to the public, because we really don't want the anti-vaxxers out there to win this battle of knowledge. And my problem with YouTube is there's no filter on it. There's not a rating system that says you can trust this information or you can't trust this information. And it's entirely possible to build a completely false picture of the world based on what you read on YouTube. And actually, I mean, it's really interesting, because I grew up in the UK, and the news to me was watching the BBC, and the BBC had reporters who had ethics and they had standards. And you knew that they would probably present a balanced picture of the world. Nowadays, we live in a world where it's entirely to build up a picture that agrees with your own prejudices. And I'm going to pick the Fox News channel.
Sure.
And that's, I'm not disrespecting right wingers or anything. I'm going to pick that. Yeah. But if you're a right winger and you only get your news from Fox News, you get a picture of the world that may not necessarily be fully informed.
Yeah, you still think that Trump won the election and it was stolen from him.
Yeah, and that concerns me, because it's terribly important, I think, that as a society, whether we're right wingers or left wingers, we need a dialogue, and that it's not about polarizing and division. It should be about unification, in my view. And I like to think that, and again, I'm not going to say what my politics are, but I like to think that if I disagree with something about a political issue, we can agree to disagree at the end of it and then go off and have a beer. I don't really think...
so where's the line then? You talk about you don't want the anti-vaxxers to kind of win the debate. We can agree to disagree. What if someone, and I'm actually vaccinated, I was able to get it, so it's not me, but what if someone wants to disagree with it and wants to actually put out there that They don't think it's the best path forward to get vaccinated. I mean, it's funny, this is the third podcast almost in a row. We had a conversation about platforming versus deplatforming people, and do we put out views that are questionable and challenge them, or do we not put out those views at all, which is better for society? So if we want to have a dialogue about it, what if we're having a dialogue with someone who is saying something insane about, I talked to you before we started about, I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for the flat earthers. I love talking to them. It's great. I find it fun. But it's all shit. It's complete bollocks, and it's so easy to debunk. So it's not really dangerous. Anti-vaxxers could be dangerous. So what do you then actually, maybe it's about engagement. You want to have a conversation or a dialogue with people, but what do you then engage with, and what do you not allow to get into the public sphere?
Yeah, and this is a really difficult area. And again, I'm not fully qualified to comment on this stuff, but I will say, I mean, it's weird. I'm a justice of the peace at the moment, which is a role you do as a volunteer, and I'm studying to try and become something called a judicial justice of the peace. And I grew up knowing nothing about the law, right? I had never read an Act of Parliament until I started this course, and I had never read the Bill of Rights Act. And I think if you haven't read the Bill of Rights Act as a citizen, you should.
Right.
Because in that, and I will answer your question, it comes back to, certain freedoms and the freedom of expression, the freedom to have an opinion, the freedom, all of these things that in a free and open society we must have. So I personally don't think, and this is a personal view, hasten it's not the museum's view, it's my personal view, I personally feel that it's not the state's duty to tell people what to think.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I grew up, I could go to the library, and in the library I went to in Bromley in the UK, there was a copy of Mein Kampf.
Right, yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not anybody who would agree in any way, shape or form with the material in that book. But the fact is, reading the book can certainly help you form an opinion about, the rights and wrongs of that particular piece of work. That's a terrible example to use, but I'll use it.
I don't think it's terrible, because it's the exact kind of thing. I mean, we're getting the word Nazi bounced around left, right and centre in society today. So, that horrific book is probably a perfect example. Do you have those abhorrent, we've got this hate speech legislation going through at the moment, that sort of thing. I mean, the only reason we need freedoms of speech is for abhorrent speech. You don't need it for things we all agree with. So I think Mein Kampf is a perfectly good example. Do you have it available so you don't, if we forget history, we're doomed to repeat it? Yeah. But there was a very good documentary by Paula Penfold on stuff.co.nz on Billy TK sharing his anti-vaxxer views. And I believe exposing and putting that out there was incredibly powerful way of debunking what he was saying, as opposed to going, we don't want to share these views, we don't want to platform him, but actually, quote unquote, platforming him, I think was one of the things that helped to take all his power away.
And I think it's very easy for me. I mean, again, I grew up, I've got white privilege, and I recognise that. But I think lived experience is terribly important, and having a society where we can listen to other people's views, no matter how abhorrent they may well be, is something I think that shines light on the abhorrence rather than hides it away and lets it fester. And this whole area is getting quite troubling. And I think this is possibly one of the downsides of the age we live in with social media. It's terribly easy on social media for folks to say someone said something and therefore they should be deplatformed. And
The thing about lived experience, and I agree with you when we're talking about people whose experiences are valid, and I can't understand what person X has been through because I haven't walked a mile in their shoes. But my only concern with lived experience is it's often used as thus, therefore, it is complete evidence. Whereas I think that lived experience is, if anything, anecdotal evidence, because it's that person's experience. Yeah. And we do hear a lot about people talking about, denying my lived experience. No, because you can have a lived experience and that can still be anecdotal. That's just you. That doesn't mean it's representative of the whole group.